This is my project for the winter. This is a 1970 Honda SL175. It's got most of the original stuff still there. It also came with a tank and with the engine as well, which I'll show you in a bit, but it's just got some rust, some patina, but the parts are all there. There's really a very minimal, structural level rust on it, so I'm pretty optimistic about being able to restore this thing to factory condition. So in this video, I'm going to be tearing into the engine. Easy outs are pretty great for engines like these. Turns out there was actually a bolt right there. In order to take this oil filter housing off the crankshaft, you have to have one of these special lock nut sockets. So I got this one off Amazon. It was only like $9. I'll link it in the description. That was on there. So the oil pump comes out with the clutch basket, and it's this piston type oil pump. Somebody at some point tried to split the case halves on this thing because they removed all the fasteners and they never put them back. So after looking at the service manual, I found out there's actually this other crankcase bolt underneath the oil drain plug. I don't think whoever tried to take this engine apart before me knew that. They were probably wondering why they couldn't get the cases to split, and that would be why. Just goes to show you how helpful it is to have a good service manual. Look at that, they even labeled the shift forks as left, center, and right. Thanks, Honda. All right, there's the other one. All right, now I just got to repeat that same process for the other 3 valves. There it is. That's the entire engine disassembled. So the next step is going to be to clean off all the parts really good and inspect them for serviceability. I won't film all of that just because it won't be much to watch, but the goal is to get a parts list together of what all it's going to need. Got all the bottom end components cleaned up really good. I went over the case halves, both internal and external, with some Marvel Mystery Oil. I'm a really big fan of that stuff because it's designed as an oil additive, so if there's any residue on the internal parts of your engine, it's not going to cause any oil system issues. I also had to order a new set of crankcase bolts. I've got them all laid out in the order they go in, ready to put this thing back together. Well, that obviously didn't work. It was just way too difficult to get all those alignment pins simultaneously lined up while also engaging the shift forks. So I'm going to try doing it the other way because all the pins are on the top side of the crankcase. So hopefully this works better. All right, back together. The technique of putting all the transmission components in the top half of the case and then putting the bottom on was definitely the way to go. That made it a whole lot easier. On further inspection of the original pistons, this one had quite a bit of scuff scoring on it. You can definitely feel that with your fingernail if you run it over it, and it did cause a little bit of gouging on the cylinder wall as well. So I went ahead and got some 1mm oversized pistons that came with the rings. It's only $75, so that's a pretty good deal. But I'm gonna have to the cylinders rebored just to make sure that the score marks on the cylinder walls don't, affect the new pistons as well. The original valves had quite a bit of pitting on the seats, so I went ahead and got new ones. So now it's time to grind them in. This is how I check to see if the valves are sealing right. I'll turn the head upside down, fill the head with water, and then shoot some air in. Since this exhaust valve is still leaking after I tried to lap it by hand, I'm going to use a little bit more aggressive method. Put a piece of fuel line on the valve stem there and hook a drill up to this and turn it with a drill. try that again. One thing I realized as I was putting these rocker arm shafts in, they actually protrude into the holes for the head studs. So I'm gonna have to go in and try to push them out that way a little bit. Add just a bit more lubricant to the cam lobes while I can. Looking at the cam, it appears that top dead center is this notch on the right side, and then this little pin on the left. See, the lobes are at top dead center now. Alright, now it's time to install the head. The tricky part is going to be fishing the other end of the cam chain out from the bottom of the crankcase. I took some welding wire and made this little hook. Let's see if it works. There it is. That's kind of tricky. Alright, that was pretty tricky, but I got the master link kind of pushed in. Alright, it sure feels like top dead center on the crank. And that's top dead center on the cam. So it looks like we're good. Time for the master link. I'm doing this with the engine on its side because I really don't want to drop this into the bottom of the crankcase. That'd be a bad day. So I realized after I put the engine back together that I actually made a mistake in the valve timing. The way I caught it was, once I had the stator cover on, I could see this timing mark here when it was lined up with this index mark. That's supposed to be top dead center for both cylinders. So when I went up here, I noticed that that little pin on the cam was kind of aligned to the right a little bit by maybe 15, 20 degrees. So it wasn't sitting right at 12 o'clock, it was sitting at more like 12:30. And when I rotated the crank to line the pin up vertically like it is now, this T-mark, before I fixed it, it was probably a good, 20 or 30 degrees off this way. So kind of the number of teeth on the cam chain sprocket, and it had 30 teeth. So do the math, 360 divided by 30, that was about the angle that I was seeing. So I concluded that it was off by 1 tooth. The way I fixed it was, I pulled off the valve cover, I pulled off both of the cam bearings, and then I backed off the set bolt for the cam chain tensioner. And I just grabbed the cam chain and just pulled up on it to try to back off some of that tension on the tensioner, because it's kind of sitting like that. Then once I had it pulled up, I reached over here and then tightened this back down to set that tension in the cam chain. So what I ended up with was a little bit of slack in the cam chain, and I was actually able to just hold it up and just move the cam underneath it to just shift it over 1 tooth and then put it all back together. It's all good to go now. So you can see with the T-mark lined up, the pin is straight up and down. What I kind of learned from that was, if you're gonna do one of these, you should definitely mock up the side cover with the stator in it, because at the time I was doing that, when I was setting my valve timing, I had this out for paint. So I was painting it at the time, and I didn't have a way to mock it up. But if I had done that, I would have caught it, because there's enough play around that top dead center mark with the pistons that if you just try to feel it, you might very well end up being 1 sprocket off, kind of like I was. So lesson learned there. All right, that's a wrap. All put back together, looking pretty good. Besides the valve timing issue, the only other thing I think I would have done different on this project was, when I was taking it apart, I probably would have disconnected the cam chain master link before I started pulling anything else off, because I removed the cam bearings first. I think I was just kind of making it a little bit harder on myself doing that. But other than that, for not really going into this, having done a lot of research on these motors and just kind of winging it, it's pretty cool to see it come back together. I certainly learned a lot in the process, so I hope you learned something along with me as you watch this video. Unfortunately, the rest of the bike has a long ways to go. I haven't even started on it yet, so won't get to see this engine run until probably sometime this spring. But in the meantime, I'm confident that it's going to run good. It's got strong compression. If you have any suggestions, any tips, any feedback for working on these motors or working on these older Hondas, I'm still pretty new to these bikes, so welcome any feedback. Just drop it in the comments. I think this calls for another shot beer. Thanks for watching.